Hi everyone, welcome to an hour with Losico. Today I have with me Divya Seth, who's actually a very old friend of mine, and she has been working in the US as a dual qualified lawyer. She graduated from NLU Jodhpur and then went on to work in India for some time, and then she did her LLM, and now she is working in New York as an attorney, as a corporate lawyer, of course. And she is going to share her experiences and answer many of your questions and my questions about working in the US as a lawyer. And, for especially for those Indian lawyers and law students who one day want to work in the US, this is going to be a very beneficial discussion. So, welcome to an hour with Lawsico, Divya.
Hi, thank you for calling me.
Yes. So why don't you tell us about yourself a little more, like your background and everything, so that the people who listen to the discussion can relate to it.
Sure. So I did my LLB from National Law University, Jodhpur, graduated in 2012. And then I went on to work for a law firm in New Delhi called Classes Law. There I was handling mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, and general corporate advisory work. After a few years, I came to the United States to do my LLM. I went to University of Pennsylvania Law School, and on the side, I also did a certificate program in business and law from the Wharton School, graduating in 2016. I also took the New York bar after that and cleared it and worked till 2018, where now I'm working with an Indian law firm. They have recently set up a New York office. It's called Majmudar and Partners. We're a Mumbai-based law firm, and now I'm heading the New York office here.
Great, awesome. So tell us about what's like if I want to work in the US, okay? What are the three things or four things I should keep in mind? If you can start with that.
Sure.
Like I
So
first went and studied in the US, then started working. It's not really like I can just shift to the US and start working. Right? I can't directly apply to US law firms or lawyers to work under them. Correct?
no, you're correct. So, firstly, you need to take the bar exam, and for taking the bar exam, you all of the states require you either to have a Juris Doctor degree, which is a 3-year law degree, or an LLM. So, with the LLM, you can only take the bar exam in three states, which is New York, California, and Texas. For all other states, there are separate bar exams, but for that, you needed to do a JD degree. So if you want to work in the US, the first thing is do an LLM and then take the New York bar exam and then start applying for jobs. Now,
Or
one thing,
do a JD also instead of LLM.
yes, if you have, if you want to, pursue your career, you can also do a 3-year law degree. That's the JD. And the advantage there over an LLM is that they have an on-campus recruitment. So in the second year, they have a recruitment. You can, go for a summer associate position the following year, and then after the summer associate position, your job is confirmed. So unlike in the LLM, there's no recruitment. So you are on your own to look for jobs here. That's the difference.
So you know what we interviewed some days back. Somebody who studied at the Harvard Law School and did an LLM from there, and
Mm-hmm.
he had a fantastic track record in India,
Mm-hmm.
and he went and did an LLM there, and he came back to India. So he asked him that how difficult or easy it is to get a job after doing an LLM at Harvard. What he said is that it is next to impossible, 1 in 100 opportunity that you might get a job in the US after doing an LLM. And he said even it's same from even if you have done it from Harvard.
Yes.
And he literally said that if you want to get a job, then do not do an LLM, go for a JD, and you can get a 2 year JD, which would probably make a lot more sense. And right now in the US, for an Indian lawyer to get a job is quite difficult if you just do an LLM. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. With an LLM degree, it's extremely difficult to get a job. The only way you can get a job is through networking. You have to attend a lot of events and conferences and make connections on your own. So, for the challenge for Indians is coming from a new country, coming here and making connections from scratch is
So far.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yes, in like 9 months,
One,
which is the
9 months.
duration of the LLM program. It is extremely difficult whether you're from Harvard or Columbia or University of Pennsylvania. But sometimes you can get lucky. You can make the right connections by attending the right conferences and meeting people. So that's the way to go here.
All right. So, would you say that if networking is the key, would you say that what happens? Maybe if I get a longer stay in US, I might be able to crack it. So, do you think that after the 9 months, the US allows you to stay for a longer time and actually network or anything?
Actually, unfortunately, that's not true because, after you finish the LLM program, as per the US law, you have only 3 months in which you have to prove to the USCIS, which is the immigration authority here, that you have a job. And once you prove it within 3 months, the OPT, which is the optional practical training period, which is granted for 1 year, can get extended. If within 3 months you can't show that you have a job, the opt will not be granted for 1 year, and usually that's what happens. So candidates go back to their home country. But I just want to get back to your previous point on the 2 year jd. So for Indian lawyers who want to permanently stay in the US, that's a very good option, because you can usually the jd is for 3 years, but there are some law schools which are very good and they offer a 2 year program. You can directly apply for it. Some require you to give the LSAT, some don't. There's an application process, and then you can sit for the on campus placement in the 2 year JD, which can lead to a job.
Right. So, from many people, what I understand is that the cost of doing a JD as well as an LLM from a good law school in the US is quite prohibitive, and like
Mhm.
you have to pay a really high fee. Now in India, also most law schools have become extremely expensive.
Right.
You study law in India, probably you end up spending like anything these days between 15 lakhs to 20 lakhs, 730 lakhs people are paying to study law in India from Indian law schools. From national law universities also, it has become like that, 3 to 4 lakhs per year. So what is it like to study in the US?
It is expensive, especially because we are coming from India. 1 year LLM can cost you easily somewhere between 70,000 US dollars to 90,000 US dollars, depending on which city you are in, which college you are in. And a JD also is about the tuition fee per year is about 50 to 60,000 per year. But you can, of course, apply for scholarships, and many students do get scholarships and waivers from US colleges. So that's the other thing.
Okay, so in Indian rupee, how much is that? Like usually somebody, how much does one have to spend?
It would be about 50 lakh for 1 year, if you like look at about 90,000 US dollars, something like that, 80 to
That is
90,000.
the JD, and if you do an LLM, it could. Sorry,
Uh,
LLM is 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs
yes, per year.
per year, and for
And
JD it will be double.
also it's the same per year.
Okay, for JD
Yeah.
it will be roughly like a crore or something, basically.
Yeah, yes. I mean, of course, you can get scholarships and then get waivers or bank loans also.
Right. Okay. Okay. So tell us a little more about how was your experience at University of Pennsylvania in terms of learning and what kind of opportunities did you get throughout the year? How compared to when you have been to an Indian law school, so would you describe the experience at UPenn as a very extremely rigorous experience compared to that? What would you say?
Well, yes, the 1 year program is very rigorous, and the standard of education is totally different here. But it's a very, very good experience. It's nothing compared to Indian law schools. Indian law schools, I mean, they're not that good as US law schools. Here, they have a conversational based system where it's a conversation between the professor and the student. And I mean, it's very nice, it's very interactive. The examination system is different. There can be take home exams. There can be exams where you can just sit for 3 hours at home and then do a timed exam. And there are, of course, in class examination systems. And also, the entire experience of studying at a US law school with international students from all over the world is incredible. there are students in my batch. There were students from 120 countries. So getting to learn from their experience and their culture, their languages is a very good and enriching experience. And of course, I must mention the professors. They are world renowned experts. They have their own books. They are authorities on law, even for corporate law and other areas. So it's a very good experience to learn directly from them.
Okay. So, what was the like? Just tell us the best experience you had through in your LLM at University of Pennsylvania. Tell us something about a story, maybe.
Sure. So the best experience was, I mean, when people from different countries meet together and then they discuss their cultures and experiences. I think that's very enriching in terms of what you gain. And we definitely get to know people from other countries after completing the LLM. When you're visiting another country, you can just say hi, stop by, and you have connections all over the world. And the other thing, as I mentioned, studying from world renowned experts in their fields and also from partners at law firms in New York. They are from top 100 law firms all over the world, and then they share experience, their own experience on working on international transactions, which it was very beneficial for me as I'm a corporate and transactional lawyer myself. So yeah.
Great. So, when you finished the course, so what? How did you like? You said it's really difficult to get a job usually after doing an LLM. So, what was your experience of searching for a job? What did you have to do, and how did you manage to get the job that you got?
Sure. So it is time taking and it requires a lot of patience. So there are a couple of things that students can do. First is to start networking right from day one. I know it sounds difficult, but you have to do it. That's the American culture. So uh, the law college, the universities, they offer a lot of opportunities in terms of events. Sometimes, like University of Pennsylvania had a lot of events where they invited partners from different law firms in New York, and also some law firms in Philadelphia had events where they invited students from my university. So those were the opportunities that law school provided us. You have to make it a point to attend all of them. I mean, you can't be laid back if you're looking for a job, and also you have to make connections with your JD, the other JD students in your university, your fellow LLM students, because maybe at a point later on they might have a job and then they can put in a referral for you when you are on the path to getting a job. The other thing I would like to mention is that you should never have any sort of a break in your career. So for example, after you graduate and you found a small position with a small law firm, and you say that you don't want to join a small law firm, but I wouldn't advise that. I think it's important to not have a break on your resume, and that's what I did. So join a small law firm, take that position, get that experience, and you can keep applying to other places, other positions, till something of your choice comes across. And in my process, I joined a law firm, a company, and then now my current employer. So I think it takes time, but if you have the experience and you can get that position, then just take it and show. Within 3 months, you can show the USCIS that you have a position, and then your OPT will get extended, and then you can move from there on. So that's the process I would advise students to take. Of course, if you get a job in a big US law firm, that's great. Many people have done that. But for Indians, it gets difficult because US and India relations are not as great as, say, US or Latin America or US and Europe. So for students from Latin America or European countries, it's relatively easier because of the business and because of the relationships that these countries share. So for Indians, most of the students from my batch also went back, or they looked for positions in Singapore or Hong Kong, which is relatively easier, and the LLM is considered very valuable there because those positions open up. There are law firms based in New York who have offices in Asia, like Singapore and Hong Kong. So then they do interview you, and I also had those opportunities. So students can even explore that route.
Great. So, mostly students do take a educational loan and they get it in the US. They get an US educational loan to study at a good university. So how does that work? If you're going out of the country, you keep paying it in the US. How, like, what's the system like?
So I would like to correct you here. Only those students can get a loan who have, a sponsor in the US, like a relative, a close relative or family. For example, I could not procure a loan here because I did not have immediate family members here, who US citizens, I mean to say, who can be a co-signer on the loan. So it's difficult. Many people get the loan from India and then come here, but it gets more expensive because the rate of interest is higher there. But I would definitely encourage students who have family members or immediate relatives who are US citizens to apply for a loan here because the rate of interest is very low. It's as low as 3%. So that's a good option.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if it is possible, you should definitely get a loan from the US rather than India,
Yes.
right?
Of course, rather than paying 7% or 10%, whatever the rate of interest is in India.
Okay, so how is the obviously when once you get a job, uh, it's like you said like things get easier for staying in the US. But what was the process for you? Like how you told us a bit about how to go about looking for a job, but how did it in reality work out for you? If you can tell us,
Well,
what's
nerve-wracking. It's definitely difficult, but the key is to have patience and wait for 1 or 2 years. As I said, if you get a position with a big law firm, it's very good, it's excellent. They will handle all your visa, they will do the OPT for you and then file for your visa. It's easy. But if you don't, then I would suggest take up any position that you're getting in your field of interest and then move on from that. I did that too. I moved from a small New Jersey law firm to a New York company and then now to my current employer. So then it gets little easier once you can make the move and show them that you have experience in the US and India as well. Also, like if somebody is coming for a higher education in the US, I would definitely advise them to first have law firm experience or work experience in India because employers, if they see that a candidate has zero experience, then they will not consider you at all. Like it's it's even more difficult. But if they see that you have experience in India, then they might even consider you. Also, if the experience is in corporate law or transactional law or capital markets and those fields that are more global than some, then it's an advantage, as was the case with me. If you're a litigator in India, then it gets a little difficult because here transactions and obviously transactions are global. So a law firm here will pay more heed to your resume that has international experience working for international clients, US or European clients, and then they will consider your
but
resume.
litigation is very local, right? So if the rules are local, the style is very different in the US.
Yes.
So that is going to be a,
Yes.
I
So for
think,
litigation, I would definitely say that the candidate should do a JD because then they teach you civil procedure and all those rules of law. So that's more beneficial. But if you're looking to do a corporate law or M&A in the US, then LLM is okay. It's doable. And most of the people who I've met, like partners at law firm, they tell me now that LLM is sufficient for corporate or M&A. But if you want to do litigation, then definitely you won't. It's difficult to get a job within LLM.
right. And the US, I think a large majority of jobs are related to like litigation is huge compared to India, where litigation is still relatively smaller. In the US, I believe the litigation sector is much bigger and has a lot of opportunities for jobs. So, but keeping that aside, Divya, when you started working, can you tell us what kind of work were you doing in your first job and what was the experience like?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, I joined a New Jersey law firm. It was again through networking. I went for an event and I was introducing myself to people. So, somebody mentioned that this law firm, the managing partner of that law firm, is looking for a candidate as to join as a fresher. And your background is in corporate law, so that would be an advantage. So, I met with the managing partner at the event itself and at that moment, of course, he didn't say anything. He didn't ask me about my resume or my background, but he did call me later on to his office to meet with him. And that's what I did. And then I sent him my resume and he called me for the position. And then I used that as a stepping stone to get the other positions, because again, my second job was also through networking. I knew somebody and we were at an event, and I mentioned my work experience in India on corporate law joint ventures, and that at that point of time they needed someone to review their contracts and their legal work. So I joined a corporation, and I was working with outside attorneys from other law firms, and then after that, I got in touch with a recruiter, Majmudar and Partners. As I said, it's a Mumbai-based law firm. They were setting up an office here, so that position came through a recruiter.
Okay. So what I was asking though is like in your first job, what sort, and even maybe in the later jobs, you can also tell
Hmm.
like what kind of work was involved. Like
Okay,
you have
got
worked in India on a certain kind of transactions and work, and how was it different there, and what sort of work did you have?
Okay, yeah, so there I was mainly involved in contract drafting and review of asset purchase agreements. So the work I had done in India was very similar to the work that I was assigned. In India, if you have worked on corporate and M&A transaction, it involves a lot of transaction documents. And here also there was corporate work. There were APAs to be signed, so joint venture agreements between parties, and sale of businesses, purchase of businesses. So it was very similar. So that's why I got a hang of the work also. And of course, when I had doubts on the US law, I did ask other colleagues, as other associates within the firm, and they were very helpful. They did help me on that. But also, the terminology used in US is different from what we use in India. Like joint venture agreements are called operating agreements here, so understanding the terminology was also a task. And then I reached out to my colleagues, but it didn't take that much of a shift, because I had taken certain courses related to securities law or corporate law in law school in my LLM, so things were okay. They were not that difficult to understand.
Correct. And when you actually started this job, then like how did you find the environment different from Indian law firm?
It is different. They are more particular about everything. Even in India, we are particular, but here you have to come early on, on time, and uh, they are. I feel that they are more perfectionists than we were in India. So that was one thing I felt.
So you are actually heading an Indian law firm in New York. So what's the experience of that? Like how is it different than uh, how is an Indian law firm operating in the US like?
Sure. So it's very different. Fortunately, I was hired at the same position as I would have been in India. I got hired as a principal associate, but now I'm wearing multiple hats. So in India, you wouldn't have had that kind of exposure or experience. You would be working on transactions and reporting to the partner. But here, of course, since the office is new, and now I have to oversee multiple functions, like I have to even do the legal work, also do business development for the firm, also do accounting for the firm, because our team from India helps, but I have to oversee the operations here. So everything is from start, and it's new, and it's exciting.
All right. So what's the opportunity for Indian law firms to expand in the US? Why do they expand in the US? What kind of opportunities are there?
So it's an interesting time, I would say. We are the second law firm to open an office here, and now things are changing for the better. I think Mr. Modi, has marketed India a lot also. So deals are increasing, and there's more flow from US to India. The reason why our firm opened an office here was that we already had a lot of US clients. So the goal was to maintain those relationships as well as build new relationships in the US. And because of the current environment, with India's going up in the ease of doing business and other reforms in corporate law, things are changing. So there's increased activity and increased interest by US investors into India. And that helped because I have worked in India, also I worked in US. So when you are interacting with the partners or other clients in the US, it gets easier to understand the US law aspects as well as India law aspects, and you can talk to them about both US law and tell them about India law. So I think that's the benefit. And there are definitely a lot of law firms looking to open an office here. I know some law firms, they don't have physical presence, but they definitely do have some people informally in the US who are working for them. So that's, yeah, that's, there's definitely interest.
So far we are used to, like, law firms having some best friend relationships, I believe, with foreign law firms. It's quite
Yeah,
interesting to see that they're finally opening their own offices. Uh,
yeah. But I don't think that those best friend relationships have worked so much. They mostly break off. So that's, I think it's now focused to more open relationships with all law firms rather than one particular law firm.
sure. Okay. So, if somebody wants to start working in the USA as an Indian, you said that it's a good idea to practice in India for some time before you actually shift to the US, because even uh, getting maybe a position in a law school, which is still possible because you're paying a big money, so
No,
some other law school will provide.
it's also your application.
Yeah, sure, but there are so many law schools are now in the US, having they're not able to fill up all their seats. Also, I believe from what I read in the media. Is that correct?
No, I don't think that's true with the top law schools. Maybe you must have read about the low ranking schools, but definitely with top 10 to 15 or 20 law schools, that's not true. And I don't think it should be true for others also. Uh, if somebody is coming from India, I would definitely advise them to target the top 10 to 12 law schools, because if you are looking for a job in the US, if you're not from the top 10 to 15 law schools, it's even more difficult. Like the difficulty level just increases. So to get your chances, you should do it from Harvard or Columbia or other top law schools. I know it's difficult, but it also depends on your application, and if you have the right guidance, you can word it that way.
So you will be saying that, like, the one should not off below, like, at least the top 10 or 12 law schools. Don't go beyond that. That's what you said.
Yes, if you're looking to stay in the US and if you have come for an LLM, then definitely look for the top 10 to 12, at the max 15 law school. But below that, it's even more difficult. And even with the 2 year JD, you should target the top law school. Like Northwestern Pritzker School of Law has a has a very good 2 year JD program, and it also offers the on campus recruitment. So even if you're doing the 2 year JD, don't go for just any school. Like I don't mention them, but don't go for any low ranking school.
Okay. What ranks to trust? Because there has been this whole debate about what are trustworthy rankings and what are not. So if you can throw some light on
Well, I used US News and World Reports. Those are for JD rankings, but even for LLM rankings, they're quite helpful. And the top 10 to 15 law schools would remain the same. Like if they are good, they are good. They don't go up and down the rankings that much.
that. Okay. So, is there a difference between the East Coast and the West Coast? Let's say I want to, like, is there certain cities I should focus on apart from the law? In India, this is definitely true that you should
Mhm.
go for, law schools which are located in Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi. These are because that's where all the jobs are. Does that
Mhm.
apply to US also? How does that work?
Well, there are two things. Firstly, depends on what area of law you want to focus on. Like University of California, Berkeley has a very good intellectual property program. It's one of the best in US. And if people want to focus on that, they can look for that university. University of Pennsylvania and Columbia have very good corporate law programs. University of Pennsylvania has the best corporate law program because it also offers the Wharton Business and Law Certificate, which is taught by Wharton faculty in Wharton School, and it you can choose management and business law courses. Also, you can choose management courses at the business school if you want. So it offers a very good, interplay between business and law, and that becomes an advantage. If somebody wants to do tax, Georgetown Law and NYU School has like very good tax focused courses, and of course Harvard is again the best with anything. So it really depends on which area you want to focus on. And as regards the jobs are concerned, most of the East Coast law firms or candidate just gather around New York or Boston or DC. If you want a job in public policy or government or international organizations like the UN, Washington DC is the place to be. If you want corporate law jobs, New York is the place to be. So it really depends where and what you want to do.
Okay. And what about internships? Where while you are doing your LLM or JD, do people do internships as well?
No, no. So with the LLM, there are no internships offered. The only break you have is in December, so law firms don't offer internships. The only law school I know is Georgetown University, which offers an externship in December. So I think that they have a separate process, but with all other law schools in the LLM, there's no internship. With the JD, I had mentioned earlier that in your end of first year, you sit for on-campus recruitment. So in your second year summer, you can get to intern with a law firm. It's an interview process. 2 months you spend at the law firm, and mostly like 99% of the students get jobs after the internship. So that's how it works.
I I saw your LinkedIn profile. It says that you did one internship at Parish Chan Patel at
Hasri Chan Patel. Yeah, that was the New Jersey law firm.
all right, all right. So that was more like an internship also.
Yes, that was like an internship, and yeah, then I had moved on after that.
All right. So
But that is even after the LLM. It wasn't during the LLM. So, I mean, after the LLM, through the networking, I had got that position. And then they were offering a full time position as well. But I wanted to move to New York, given by New York, my New York license. So I had
yeah.
moved to another company after that.
So like if you get a New York bar license, you can also is it that you can also practice in other districts? How does that work?
So it depends. If you are working for corporations, you can. Some companies require you to have a New York license, some don't. Also, sometimes, what happens is if somebody does an LLM and doesn't sit for the New York bar, they can do jobs like contract review and other part time jobs which require just review of documents. But that's not very well paying jobs. They're just, if you want to stay in the US, if you want to show that you have a job, you can do that. And also, there's no guarantee that you'll get a job. Also, some states offer reciprocity. So if you're New York licensed, after a certain period of time, you can waive into the bar exam of another state, and then you can work in that state. There is another way of practicing in other states is to talk to the law firm, and then if they allow, they can let you practice.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And how does it work with respect to living costs and how do you get paid? If you can give us some idea, I'm not asking your salary specifically. I'm
Sure.
asking about if I am going to work in the US, what I should expect in terms of living costs and what would be like a minimum salary I should be aiming for, and also what sort of salary you get in different kinds of employment as a lawyer.
So, if you work in the top law firms here in New York, the starting salary is a lot. It's $180,000. That's the top 100 law firm in New York, like Sherman and Sterling and all of the other law firms. So then you are safe. I mean, you're earning good salary. You can, pay your rent. New York, the rent is very high. It depends again if you're taking a studio or a one bedroom or two bedroom. It can range from $1,500 to $3,000 or $4,000 per month. But again, it depends on many other factors. In Philadelphia, things are cheap. So if you're also doing studying there, the rent is not that much. So you can easily share with another student and pay about $300 to $900 per month and get a room, get a flat. Again, it depends. Boston is again expensive. DC is expensive. So the rent can range from 1,500 to 3,000, $4,000. And generally, if you're not working in the top law firms, the average salary, starting salary, can range anywhere between $60,000 to $110,000. That's the range because only the top law firms offer a good salary.
Okay. And what if you're working like basically 60 to 100, 110 is like what the usual range is what you're saying.
Yeah, 60,000, 80,000. It depends again on firm and the city and what position you're at. So it's relative.
All right. So apart from law firms, is there a realistic opportunity to work with companies in the US?
Yes, of course. Yes. So I worked with a corporation before. It was a real estate corporation. And again, with networking and with the right opportunities, you can get an in house role. Also, it depends on the company. They might want you to register as an in house practitioner because I think, again, some states have that rule. So with the New York law license, you'll have to take that registration also. So there are a host of different things with corporations, but you can get a job there also.
Okay, so we got some questions from different people. So let's see what questions we have got today so far. So Arpita Bhatt is asking, so LLM has to be done from USA or India? LLM is eligible for USA bar exam. And I think
Sorry.
so. Somebody is asking if India LLM is eligible for bar exam in USA.
No, no, no. So you have to, the rules here, the American Bar Association requires you to have an LLM from an ABA accredited law school, which is a US law school. So with the Indian LLM, you cannot sit for the New York bar exam.
Okay, I think that's clear. Shreyans is asking, can you tell me about the scholarship scheme which is available for Indian students? Yes, I think I we should talk a bit about this, about what scholarships are available if you want to study in the US. You mentioned it briefly, so can you
Mhm.
tell more about this?
Sure. So there are a lot of trusts in India. Like I think the Tatas have a trust, Birlas have a trust. They offer scholarships. So if you go to their website or just Google scholarship options for studying abroad, there you can see a list of organizations that offer scholarship. I remember these two, but when I was applying, it's been some years back. So I don't remember the names of the organizations. You can Google it, you'll find it. There is an application process, and there's a deadline, of course, before which you have to submit an essay or something. And then they will evaluate and offer you scholarships. Mostly for higher education, there are lots of organizations that offer. The second is, of course, law school itself. So, University of Pennsylvania also had a separate application for scholarship. Columbia had one. Harvard had one. So, you submit the application along with your LLM application, and then they will revert back with the decision once you are admitted. After that, they will revert back regarding the scholarship. And I know some people who even negotiated for scholarship. Once they got like a 5,000 scholarship, they went on to the management and said that Columbia is offering me 8,000. So why don't you give me like a 10,000 scholarship? And they got that, believe it or not. So that's another, way you can speak to law schools.
All right. So, if you can tell us a little more about scholarships, like what are the factors that make sure that you get a scholarship either from a trust or from the university? How does it really work? Like what?
So of course, your qualification, they check your application to see where you studied at, your overall work experience, and the way you write the essays, what matters. Like Columbia had an essay that you had to submit. So I think they review you on your writing skills and how you word that essay. And of course, your qualifications also matter. And if you worked in a top law firm in India, then it really helps. I think Columbia and Harvard, they pay attention to which law firm you are at, even in India, because they know all the top law firms there. So it helps.
All right. So you're saying that your legal background also helps. What else can one do to strengthen their applications for scholarship as well as for getting accepted in a good US school?
So that's a nice question with respect to LLM applications because with Indian students and when I was even applying, I didn't know many things. But the first and most important thing is to keep your application very diverse. Like you have to show your achievements, uh, be it with respect to your education or your extracurricular or your other activities. You have to show that you are very involved in different things. You can't just show that you have the top GPA and expect to get accepted. That may happen, but most law schools see a diverse profile and also what you have done apart from your education. In India, many students don't pay attention to those things. Your publications do matter. Your other, like, even small things like, if you like traveling, it can you can present it in a way that you've done something different. You have to show you are different. You can't show that you've done the normal, you followed the norm, you went to law school, got a job, and then now you're applying for LLM. You have to show your diversity, and that's what LLM applications are for. Law schools consider want diverse students. They want to make the class diverse. So that's one important thing. And
So
even with the
what makes you special, you have to showcase that, right?
Yes, exactly. So you have to show how you are different. So I can give an example. So, you are yourself heading so many companies. So if you try to show that I founded this company and now it's so successful, then of course that's a very big thing. So you have to show leadership skills. You have to show your organizational supervision skills and all those things. You can't just follow the norm and submit your application. And if
Yeah,
anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help them with anything, their personal statement or with the application or anything like that.
that's great. That's great. That thank you so much. I'll just put the in fact, you can put the link of your LinkedIn profile on the comments. I think that'll help you to find it. Okay.
Yeah.
So another thing I want to ask you is, what was your personal, like, what do you believe that led to your selection in one of the best law schools? Like, what did you do in your application? What did you do right?
Well, I think it depends on the way you write your personal statement. You have to show that you are from the best law school in India, or you have this experience. And even if you're not from the best law school or you haven't gone to the top law firm, you don't need to be disheartened. You can word it in a different way to showcase your
How did
quality.
you do it? Like, what was your
So
line of
I
present?
tried to I tried to showcase my experience, and I tried to show how my experience in law school and at the law firm I was with, which was in corporate law and cross-border M&A, and I had worked for international clients. I'd worked for European retailers, US-based clients. I tried to show that to write in my personal statement that this LLM, which I'm going to do, will be focused on corporate law and how it will benefit my future, because I wish to pursue this field of my career and take this corporate law path. So I tried to show how my past combined with my present at that point of time, when I was in my law school, will help me in my LLM, and then how that LLM will help me in my future, I can take those skills and apply it in my future practice. So that's what helped, I think.
Great. I think that gives us some sort of a path to look at. Great. So now we have asked you a lot of different questions.
Mhm.
Tell us something that what are the biggest mistakes you made? Everybody makes mistakes. I'm sure you make too. So if
Sure.
you don't mind sharing, what are the biggest mistakes that you don't mind sharing that you
Sure.
make in this entire process from beginning till finding the job that you wanted?
Sure. So I think the biggest mistake for me was not to. I mean, I did get guidance, but I think the right guidance, because my aim was to stay in the US. I'm based here now, so I did reach out to people, but they advised me only on the LLM. I would. My mistake was I didn't speak to so many people as I should have. If you are planning to settle down in the US, you should definitely consider the Juris Doctor degree, the JD degree, which is you can do the 2 year or the 3 year degree that has an on campus placement. I know the costs are high, it takes time, but time will fly in a jiffy and you won't even know, and you'll get the job by sitting for the on campus placement. Rather than with the LLM, you are on your own, and as we had spoken earlier, it's difficult. So getting the right guidance as to what you want to study and what you want to do in the future, because I know a lot of people even now, they come here and they settle down here after getting married, and then they do the LLM, and they want a job, but it's very, very difficult. So even for me, if I had the right guidance, or if I'd spoken to more people, and as I said, I'm happy to help if anybody is looking for guidance on what to do, what not to do. I can speak to them, and I would definitely suggest, if you are planning to stay here, do the JD. That's the one thing.
Great. So that's one mistake. Would you like to share any other mistakes?
Mistake. I I don't think there's any other mistake as such. Like the LLM was it was a good experience. The New York bar exam is definitely difficult. You will cry when you study for it because it takes up a lot of, I mean, the entire day of your 3 or 4 months, and then you have to take it. But I don't think there's any other mistake as such.
All right. So tell us more about the New York bar exam. Like, what was it like? And did you give the other bar exams too? If yes, then why yes, or if not, why not?
Sure. So I just took the New York bar exam, and it is extremely difficult. I think it's difficult because the entire pattern is different. We are not used to this pattern in India, and the examination system is different. It's spread over 2 days, 6 hours every day, and you have to sit in a room full of 6,000 students in a stadium and give the exam. But the entire study process takes about 2 to 3 months. You can take coaching classes, and they have the entire study plan in front of you. It's difficult, but it's worth it because apart, if you don't take it, then you don't diversify your profile, or you don't enhance your profile. So without it, it's no use to stay here and work. It's a must to take. And I didn't take any other state because I didn't intend to practice in any other state. But you can also take California and Texas bar. And one more thing I want to mention is that with the Texas bar, you can take it without the LLM. So I know a friend of mine who did not do the LLM here. She just did her law from India, and she took the bar exam here. So,
All right, that's quite interesting. So for one, you are saying that if somebody wants to work at the US and doesn't want to do an LLM, it's possible to just give the Texas bar and start practicing only in Texas. In that case, I believe.
yes, only in Texas. But again, the job prospects and opportunities are difficult because any employer will look for a US education. Honestly, so even if you take the bar and say that you're qualified, it might not help that much. The
All right.
other, if I can also mention, there is another way of practicing here. If you don't want to take the New York bar, there's a foreign legal consultant license. It's only an application based process. You have to submit some documents. You don't need to take the bar. But that you can only practice as a foreign legal consultant. You can't practice the laws of USA. You can only practice the law of your foreign country. So there are a lot of Italian lawyers, Dutch lawyers who take their license, and then they're working in their own firm. Like they're working for a Dutch firm in New York.
All right. So, I mean, if there are Indian law firms there or somebody is providing advice to NRIs on Indian laws, that kind of things can be done through this, I believe.
Yes, yes. So even with my firm, I had the New York bar exam, so I didn't have to take it. But if I didn't, then I could take the FLC license and then work for an Indian law firm in New York.
All right. So that's quite interesting and very useful, I think. Uh, so tell us a little more about the what kind of bar exam, like what do you prepare for? I mean, I get it's very difficult, but why is it so difficult? What is the difficult part?
Well, everything. You have to study 16 subjects in US law, of course, and with the LLM, you choose your own subject. So if I've chosen M&A, or if I've chosen private equity as subjects, I don't study civil procedure or criminal procedure or property law of the US. And in the New York bar, you get tested on all areas of US law. So you get tested on real property, you get tested on CPC, CRPC, and so on and so forth. So that is difficult because we haven't studied US law in our LLM, like, the real property and other aspects.
Yeah.
So when you're studying it for a crash course, like in 2 to 3 months, they give you all the books. You have to study from that. That is challenging. And then the exam pattern is such that they have like one day is full of multiple choice questions. There are 200 multiple choice questions in one session and 200 multiple choice questions in another. And the second day is essay based, and there's something called an MPT, which is a practical test. It's a different pattern altogether, and it's more application based. Like even if there's no rote learning, so you have to really know the law to apply the law in the exam, and that's what makes it challenging. Like in terms of the laws that you have to study in 2 months.
But I think Indians love giving exams. We have grown up giving exams, and when you were talking about this 6 hour exam for 2 days, I was remembering my board exam, which used to be 3 hour, 3 hour every day, like total two
Oh, okay.
papers from every subject.
You should, you should
And
try for New York bar. You will pass in first attempt.
so did you. So
Yeah,
okay.
you have to. I mean, it's most Indians pass, so it's okay.
Yeah, I
But
think Indians are like well equipped to pass. Like it's a little easier for Indians, like to take exams. We are just too like geared towards taking exams and everything in our life.
yeah, and also because it's in English, so a lot of the other LLM students, for them, English is not their first language. So that for them, it's another challenge. For us, it's not a big deal, so it's okay.
So when I see like sometimes they ask you how expert you are at a language, and the expert is like weak, medium, then it's like expert, and then there's native, right? So
Yeah, correct.
I'm like, it's not my native language, but there should be something more. Like there should be another stage called
That's
Indian
actually
who only speaks English, and we might
yeah.
our vocabulary might be stronger than many native speakers, and even like in other aspects of a language, we probably
Yeah,
use it more than native speakers. So
yeah.
definitely, Indians have a huge advantage in English-speaking countries.
Yes, that's
So, apart from Indian lawyers, like, do you see this as a trend or a viable option for Indian lawyers moving to US, successfully establishing their career there? How often do you see this? Is this like I know other people apart from you who have done this successfully, but I'm just asking, being there, do you see this as a trend or a viable option for a lot of people, or is this just like really rare?
Yeah, so definitely with the LLM, the trend is that most students go back because of the inability to find jobs. For people who want to stay, some convert from the LLM to the JD. You can even do that at universities here. After you complete the LLM, like even at Penn, you had an option. After finishing the LLM, you could switch to JD, and then you can stay. Some do that, but not with Indians. Like I see that with other people from Europe or other Latin American countries, because as I said, it's easier for them to get jobs. um, Definitely, if you want to stay here, you should do a JD. And I see that many girls, after getting married in the US, they come here and they do the LLM and then think that they'll get jobs. But unfortunately, that's not true, and it's gone the other direction. So yeah, I think I was lucky in that way. But you shouldn't lose hope. You have to keep on trying for 1 or 2 years. It takes some time before you find the job of your choice. So you should definitely keep going.
All right. So, but I mean, to ask my question, what I was trying to understand is that is this like a viable option? If somebody says that, I'm gonna spend so much money and time, like 2 years and a crore on this, and then is it a really a viable option for somebody to, uh, you know,
No, so that's what I meant to say, that most Indians go back. And if you're spending so much money, you should definitely think of the consequences. Some Indians only come to do the LLM, they want to go back. So for them, it's okay. But some people who have the hope of, getting a job after an LLM, it is extremely difficult, but it's not impossible again. So you have to weigh the pros and cons of spending 50 to 60 lakhs and then trying to find a job, because a lot of people who
somebody
have
does JD, like somebody says, I want to work in the does a
no
JD,
do
maybe
the
a crore.
JD.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, the JD is more expensive and takes more time. But if you have to stay, as I said, there's guarantee that at least you'll get a job with the
So you
recruitment.
definitely
Which
get a job provided you do a JD. Like high chances of getting a job is
high
what.
chances, high. Yeah, I can't say definitely for sure. I mean, it all obviously I am not the employer, but high chance. And then again, I mean, unfortunately, with the current administration, there are visa issues also. So you have to persuade the employer to file your H1B, which is the work visa here. So you get the OPT for 1 year. Also, what some people do, they network, they get a job after an LLM with a really good law firm, and then on the OPT they work for 1 year as a foreign consultant if they can, or if they can pass the bar as an international attorney, and then after 1 year they go back to their own country. So in their own country their job prospects and opportunities will obviously increase because you're coming with experience from a US law firm. So that's also another option. Another option is that I know some people who worked here at top law firms for 1 year and then moved to the London office of that firm because US visa restrictions were there and H1B couldn't be filed. So they moved to London or Dubai or other places. So if you want to just, get in a, so another thing I want to mention is that the LLM is very, very valuable in other countries. So if you want to do 1 year here and if you want to settle abroad, you can use the LLM to settle at another location, obviously considering that you're good. So you can move to London or Singapore or Hong Kong with that
I think
experience.
London is also extremely visa-wise very difficult
Yeah,
these
I've
days.
heard. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, European countries, I think then it is better to do an LLM from Europe. But
Mm.
yeah, Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai sounds very promising. Even African countries, if those are up, to your interest, would be
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I was just mentioning this because I know somebody who went to London office of the same law firm they're working with here. But of course, it's again difficult, and they have their own visa issues.
Yeah, I mean, all these countries have taken an extremely anti-immigration kind
Yes,
of,
yeah,
you know,
that's
that's
true.
happening in UK also. I think it's not happening in Germany. It's happening in France, but France never had too many Indian immigrants, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not relevant that way. Uh, Interestingly, Japan, China, these
Mm.
countries, there are few Indians and a lot of Indian business is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So great opportunity. I think even Canada is a good country right now at the moment because Canada
Yes,
is on the rise.
yeah,
Interestingly, Russia, India is like business is very much on the rise, and Russia is another great place where you get education is cheap and chances of getting jobs higher with language problems. Same with
thank.
Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had juniors from my college who have gone to Japan and got really well paying jobs, education very cheap, not paying anything close to 50 lakhs or a crore for that matter, getting good scholarships. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there are options people can
Yes,
explore. But
definitely.
as far as US is concerned, I think what your message is very clear. People should go for it is possible, high probability if you do a JD, 2 year JD, and
Mm-hmm.
along with 2 year JD, you have to obviously perform well and all of that, and crack the New York bar exam or another different bar exam in California, etc. And then you have a real high chance of getting a job in the US.
Yeah,
So it's
2 or 3 year
a
JD.
viable option basically.
Yeah, 2 or 3 year JD. But of course, with the LLM, it's difficult but not impossible. Again, if you have the courage to stick it
Understand
out.
it is 1 in 100 chance. My previous guest also said the same, and you are also saying the same. It is possible, but 1 in 100 chance, which is not
Yes,
something I will bet so much money and time on.
exactly. Like 50 lakh rupees, and then, yeah.
Then you're not even sure, like 1 in 100 chance. That is too much,
Yes.
like terrible odds. And
Yes.
also, you are saying that before doing all of this, you must get a few years of experience in India, ideally 3 to 4 years. And doing a corporate law job will be more advantageous than doing litigation. Is that correct?
I mean, that I can say that from my personal experience because I was a corporate and M&A attorney before. So I can't say for somebody who has done litigation in India, but I saw that when I was interacting with law firms here, that they did mention that, okay, you have the, cross-border M&A or international transactional experience. That's why still we can, consider you because the contracts are the same, the transaction is the same. And you can understand the nitty gritties of the law in the US after doing the LLM. So it's not that difficult. It's easier for corporate or M&A attorneys.
Right. So it seems the biggest concern they have is that whether, as a foreign lawyer, you'll be able to do the work or not, right? Which you
Yes.
might be able to overcome through maybe a 3 month internship or something. Would you say so?
Well, internships are also difficult because, as I mentioned, between the LLM or during the LLM, you don't get internships.
But if it
I
is easy, then
Sorry.
If you're doing a JD, then you do internships, right?
Yeah, then you do internships. But I think with the if you're a foreign student doing a JD, then I don't think they have reservations because you're studying the law. You are studying all the laws. So then they don't have any reservation. With the LLM, you are choosing the law courses as per your specialization. So you're
Un-
not studying the US law as such, like the main laws. So that's why there are reservations.
Understood. Okay. So basically, if you're doing a JD, then it doesn't matter so much whether you've done corporate law or
Yeah. No,
okay.
no, it doesn't matter at all.
All right. So that's very useful. We have one more question from Shatrunjay Bose, who's asking the NYU Law School organizes annually an international student interview program for LLM students. Can
Yes.
you please enlighten on that? Does it benefit LLM students in India?
Sure, that's a good question. We didn't touch upon that. Yeah, the NYU school has an ISIP program. As he mentioned, it's in January every year. So, how it works is that by August, there's a portal on which you have to upload your resume, and employers who want certain skills out of the candidate will mention the skill on the portal. So, if somebody has mentioned cross border M&A or joint ventures or whatever, then you can apply to those applications. Then the employers will get back after reviewing your resume if they actually want an interview with you. So there, like about September or October, you can see which employers have selected you for the interview. And in January, you go to NYU, and there's an entire process of the interview application. Different people from different law schools attend the interview process, and then you go for the interview basically.
All
Uh,
right.
what I have seen in my experience is that many Indian students don't get that many interviews with global firms because they prefer candidates from European countries or Latin American countries when it comes to LLMs. Or tax LLM has a very big advantage. Tax LLM you can find jobs easily. So I didn't touch upon this, but yeah, with
Do,
that.
do tell us more about that. If I do a tax LLM, you're saying that I have a better chance of getting a job?
Sure. Yeah, so I spoke about corporate law LLM only, but with the tax LLM, you don't need to do a JD. There are big fours are there like Deloitte, PwC, and EY. They have job openings for tax specific LLMs, and that is enough. So even if you do your law from India and if you're interested in pursuing a career in tax, you can do the LLM. Georgetown has a 1 year and a 2 year tax LLM program. You can do that, and then your chances for jobs are greater than other LLMs, the normal corporate law LLMs also. So with the ISIP, as I mentioned, it depends. Like if you're doing tax, then you might have more interviews. If not, then you might not have that many.
Okay. So, what about So we have kind of wrapped up our discussion. It is 9:06. We are going to put an end to this conversation. And but before we go, I just wanted to ask you: are there any other areas like tax which are really highly in demand or easier to get jobs for Indian lawyers in the US?
The other area is corporate law. Like I wouldn't say it's easier, but after tax, you because it's a global practice area, it doesn't require study of the local law as much. It's still okay. Like in New York, there are a lot of jobs with corporations or US law firms that have these jobs. And then if you want to do public policy and get into UN, and then that's a different uh, debate and different discussion. But I would suggest you can speak to somebody who has done that.
Right, right.
Haven't tried that.
And like if like I we keep hearing that foreign law firms are now having India desks. So in
Mhm.
the US, is that common? Like, are there a lot of law firms with an India desk or India focus team? Would you say so? I mean, it's common in the UK, but how about New York?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's common, but yeah, 10, 15 law firms have India desks here, and mostly they are like JDs who are of Indian origin. Mostly, I don't find Indian lawyers in those practice areas, but again, that's a subset of the corporate law practice. That's not an exclusive India practice. And sometimes they might hire Indian, I mean, Indians like me. in the law firms. But mostly they have to have a JD or something.
Got it. Clear. So now we are going to finish this session. But before we do go, Divya, would you like to share any final message with those people who are one day hoping to go to the USA and work there?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to work here and settle here, if you made up your choice, then definitely think about the 2 or 3 year JD. And if you can't do it, then with the LLM, you have to have a lot of patience with finding a job, a lot of networking, and being there out on your own. But definitely don't lose hope and just keep going, I would say. If anyone has questions about LLM or which colleges they should choose, I would be happy to discuss with them. They can send a message on LinkedIn and I can speak to them there.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody whoever joined us today to listen to this hangout broadcast. We do hope to see you tomorrow again, 8 to 9 p.m. again, every weekday, 8 to 9 p.m. And on Saturdays, 4 to 5 p.m. We have an hour with Losico, and every day we have some or the other very interesting guests. Today we had the good fortune of having Divya with us, and
But
she shared a lot about different aspects of working in the US as an Indian lawyer, about dual qualification, about getting a JD, getting an LLM from a US law school, about the bar exam. Similarly, tomorrow we'll have another guest who would be sharing about something else. But definitely come back tomorrow to watch us and subscribe on our YouTube channel Losico so that you keep getting these videos. Even if you miss a video, you can always see the notification later. So thank you so much, Divya, for joining us.
thank you. Thanks a lot. It was amazing speaking with you, and I hope my insights help some law students in future.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. I think if people look on the internet, they'll find this to be one of the most useful resources if they're going to apply to US for jobs or uh, for even study. Thank you, everybody. Good night. We're going to put an end to this session. See you later. Good night.